This is the Ferrari 849 Testarossa, the replacement for the SF90, and it has got a lot going on. We're here at Ferrari's not-so-secret secret unveil and haven't got much time, so I better get on with it.
At launch we have this standard 849 Testarossa and then the 849 with the Assetto Fiorano package, plus the Spider.
But what about the name? Well, 849 refers to 8 cylinders and 490 cc's per cylinder with one of the zeros knocked off, which doesn't make that much sense. But the Testarossa part comes from, back in the mid-50s, a Ferrari engineer that was working on the 500 TR got some spare red paint and painted the cam covers crackle coat red, hence Testarossa, or redhead. And then later in 1984 we got the side strakes and Miami Vice Testarossa, which became famous and became part of everyone's childhood. Well, this car is supposed to be forward-looking like the 1984 Testarossa, but also have the most powerful engine in Ferrari's range like the original race car. Hence 849 Testarossa. Does that explain it?
It's an iconic nameplate and sounds a lot better than SF90 Facelift or SF90 Evo or whatever. But now it's being used for this, a second generation plug-in hybrid supercar with a twin-turbo V8 and 3 electric motors, putting out a total of 1036 brake horsepower or 1050 CV in Italian. So let's have a look at that new skin.
What it has got is quite a lot of character. Now, I thought the SF90 was a little bit mid, but the new car has a lot of things going on. Now, this one is actually the optional Assetto Fiorano package, but I'll explain that later. First of all, it's got this big black mask, which is the same as a lot of Ferrari contemporary cars at the moment, which makes it look kind of aggressive, but it's got shades of F80. I'm seeing Daytona. It's got a very tiered front end, so there's 2 very definite steps, including these little flicks which push air around the front wheel arches. It's got a lot of air at the front, which all runs through the back of the car, and as you move down it, it's got a weird kind of F80 vibe. So a very wraparound kind of cab forward stance, and then these doors, which have very accentuated air channels which feed the intercoolers in here. Now, this car makes more power than the SF90, so if you make more power, you need more cooling. This black stripe, which is present on all of the cars, is a kind of a corset, a kind of waist. It's an easy fix visually, but it makes it look kind of pinched and a little bit more Coke bottle-y, because these haunches are then almost pontoons. If you look at it from here, it's got this big fat shape that feeds into 2 spoilers. On the normal car, these are flat. The Assetto Corsa gets a double step. Essentially, they're static spoilers, and then there's an active element in the middle which pops up to give high downforce mode. And then at the back, you've got 2 central exhausts made of Inconel, and you can see down into the engine. Now, obviously, this always shocks me when I see these cars, but that engine is almost on the floor. It's a twin turbo, it's got 1050 CV, which is about 1036 brake horsepower, 4-wheel drive with 3 motors. This is quite the thing. And yes, it does have some very complex and interesting aerodynamics.
Okay, so let's dig into this with the aid of animations. The 849 produces 25 kilograms more downforce than the SF90, 415 kilograms at 155 miles an hour, and cooling performance is increased by 15% via various radiators, 1 almost laid flat in the front and 2 big intercoolers in the back. So it's marginal gains, but good ones. And the back features the twin tails, with that central section being active when it needs to pop up into high downforce mode. And the rear underbody has a multi-level diffuser with a suspended lower bit and vertical fences to corral the wheel wake. More vortex generators at the back produce the same downforce as the SF90, but with a 10% reduction in drag. And yes, the Spider gets its own aero package to take into account the swirly rooflessness, because you wouldn't want to mess your hairdo up at 200 miles an hour.
As for the inside, it is still quite snug, and this is the Assetto Fiorano package, so it's a little bit more stripped back than the normal car. But it is actually very, very comfortable. And joy of joys, there is a proper engine start button and proper switches and buttons on the steering wheel, so they're not haptics. There are haptics either side of the binnacle here, which seem to work pretty well, and then this kind of wraparound arrangement, which makes it feel much more like a cockpit, and when that door's shut, you get the same thing on the passenger side. Lots of carbon fibre, as you might expect, but interestingly, they've done a lot of stuff in this car to make it feel more visceral. Apparently, the brake pedal has a lot more feel, and there's a lot better amalgamation of the brake regen and the actual braking force, and it is louder at all speeds, especially at the top end, and there's vibration and attack through the gear shifting strategy. So this thing apparently is more visceral than ever before.
In fact, there is a bit more space than before thanks to slimmer door bottoms and adjacent bits, plus a slightly bigger glove box. And the so-called sails that frame the driving position and passenger feel nicely snug. And there's the F80 inspired gate that kind of floats on the wheel side. All in all, it's racy but usable. A cockpit that feels more edited than before, a bit more elegant.
So one of the criticisms of the old SF90 was that it wasn't massively practical for touring. So is this one much more practical? No. Ah yes, the drivetrain. Good news. It's got more power, but it is essentially the same setup as the SF90. So there's a 4-litre twin-turbo V8 with bigger turbos and 3 electric motors. One that goes at the back to drive the rear wheels and 2 at the front to give 4-wheel drive and torque vectoring capabilities.
Not that the SF90 really needed more power, but here we are. With a combined output of 986 brake horsepower and 590 pounds-feet of torque just from the engine, the SF90 wasn't weak. But the 849 ups the ante.
It does have 1050 CV or 1036 brake horsepower, which is about 50 more than the old car.
How's it done it? Lots of small tweaks and bigger turbos in essence. So it's got a new cylinder head to go with the bigger blowers, low friction bearings from the F80, a different block, intake plenums, valve train and fuel rail. Oh, and titanium fastenings and bits nicked from the 296 GT3 to make sure it actually doesn't weigh any more than an SF90. And all that extra cooling performance from the aerodynamic tweaks means that it can actually make use of it all. That all drives through an 8-speed F1-ish paddle shift that changes faster and with a bit more vim than ever before. And all of that does mean it's quite fast. Easily over 200 miles an hour, though Ferrari says it's more than 205. 0 to 62 miles an hour in 2.25 seconds, 0 to 124 in 6.3.
And yes, you can still drive it around on pure EV mode, giving about 25 kilometers of pure EV range because it's a plug-in hybrid. So it just uses the front motors in that mode, which means it's a front-wheel drive Ferrari supercar. But how does it handle more than 1,000 brake horsepower without being completely undrivable? Well, that's down to complex electronics.
Deep breath. This thing has side slip control version 9, advanced traction control to go with the EDIF, SCM, FDE 2.0, EPS, ABS Evo and 5. Now 5 is the really interesting bit because it's an estimation system that can model dynamic behaviour in real time. But all this electronic help is probably the only way you can manage more than 1,000 brake horsepower in a road car that's still even vaguely drivable day to day. As with the last car, over about 130 miles an hour it becomes rear-wheel drive only. It's also got an entirely new braking system versus the SF90, massive carbon ceramics that have their own rather nifty aero to make sure that they stay at the correct operating temperature. And there's a dedicated intake integrated into the car's flank for cooling the rear brakes. It's the biggest brake setup this side of an F80, so it should stop. If you want the fastest version, then you'll need the Assetto Fiorano, just like the SF90, something you have to spec from build rather than options package. That features more aggressive nose flicks and double height twin tail elements at the back, single phase multimatic suspension that's more racy, although it does come with a nose lift this time, loads of carbon for a 30kg weight reduction, and then other stuff including wheels and lightweight tubular seats, specifically Michelin Cup 2 tyres and a host of other bits and bobs. The Spider is also launched at the same time, featuring a folding metal hardtop and a 90kg weight penalty, although you can also order that with the Assetto Fiorano package to lighten it up a little. Cost? You're looking at €460,000 for the coupe, a flat €500,000 for the Spider, and the Assetto Fiorano package costs €52,500 for both. So that will be just under 400 grand in the UK, or 433 for the Spider, with the Assetto Fiorano costing roughly 45.5 grand.
Back when it was launched in 2019, the SF90 was a bit of a game changer. It had 3 electric motors and a ferocious V8 to give it absolutely stratospheric performance. Now it's interesting that we've got other super hypercars crowding that game. So we've got the Lamborghini Revuelto, which has a V12 and 3 electric motors, the Aston Martin Valhalla that's coming, which has very similar specs to the Testarossa, so a 4-litre V8, 3 electric motors, similar outputs. So is this refresh enough to put the Testarossa back leading the pack? Well, let me know in the comments, and also let me know what you think the definition of a supercar versus a hypercar really is.